Know that everything's cool, and yes, I will be present on the first day of school.
I've been doing like a little agenda that I've sent out to the kids like right before our class meetings, which I've been having twice a week, and it just says Zoom chats with Mrs. Redding. Jen Martin actually did the fancy form, but I just have the agenda for the day, and then I have the rules that are the same for every single meeting, like, you know, follow digital citizenship rules, have your video on unless you are experiencing connection issues, find a quiet space without interruptions or background noise, raise your hand if you want to talk, and to mute your microphone when you're not speaking. So I found that those rules.
You know, Colin, I just want to chime in and say that my favorite part of my days now are these phone call check-ins with my students. And Marin made a really good outline of like talking points when you call students and things you need to cover. And what I love doing is getting in on the back end of the applications, like, tell me about what you've been reading. And I have the AR data right there. And I'm like, oh yeah, I can see that you've taken a quiz on that. Good for you.
Sorry.
I can
So Raz Kids gives you a lot of different data. My kids have been reading about 400 or 500 books. So I have a lot of different things on it. If you look at the skills analyzing character, there's been 27 test questions and my kids are rocking character. Author's purpose, I need to teach. And that's something actually I haven't taught. We talked a little bit about.
I've been running a fourth grade study hall for a while, and I almost always have more adults than I can keep busy. You know, so like everyone jumps on, aides, librarian, a garden teacher. It's really cool. And
one thing that's been a helpful reminder for me is just how important routines are to the younger kids, especially. So me recording my voice, like reading, just like Marin does, reading the chapter books. I think that gives them some comfort, you know, because that's something they were used to. And it was super easy to do after Marin gave me the step-by-step. And
so one of my students' parents is an ecologist, and she lives and works on the Hastings Preserve out by Kashawa. And she did a guest teaching session on local birds. And she had all these videos, and she talked about different local birds and showed pictures. And then she gave the kids a bird watching checklist to fill out, and said that if they watched birds over 5 days, it didn't have to be consecutive, but they tracked, you know, how many birds they saw, how many minutes they watched, the kinds of birds, and they shared that with her. She would send them a Hastings sticker in the mail.
One thing that was, or my kids have been into, is the Padlet.
Oh,
and,
cool. Yeah, let's talk about Padlet, if people don't know about Padlet, or just briefly.
Yeah, I just, you know, again, got step-by-step instructions from Jen, and it was super easy. And the kids just post a video or a photo with a little caption, just like the one Jen set up for the Tular teachers. And it's just heartwarming to see what they're doing, and certainly some do it more than others.
And if you were telling kids about it, you could say TFT, terrible first time, because when you're feeling like uncomfortable and vulnerable and reactive and rejection, you know, like rejected and ready to reject, like, oh, it's the first time I'm doing this.
Oh, I was saying that during the first couple of weeks of this distance learning, I was feeling a lot of anxiety about what my role is to meet the needs of those students who really are not doing a lot academically right now for their own family reasons. But then there are those students that are highly motivated. Their parents are highly motivated. I'm getting a lot of emails that they're going to want as much as they can. And I'm willing to do anything I can possibly do to connect and to provide resources. But just figuring out just personally what my role is in each individual family that's a whole piece that I'm working through.
Yeah.
I would sort my students into three main groups in their participation and their engagement. One group is challenging to even communicate with, get emails returned, get text returns, get phone calls returned. And then I have another group that I would say is content to participate as close to a regular classroom as I can provide. You know, they show up in all my Zoom meetings, they sit there and do their work in front of their computer, they ask questions there, they appreciate online lessons, like they're they're happy with it being as close to classroom as possible. And then there's a third group that I feel like could handle a different model, like a flipped classroom, or they access all the asynchronous material, and then in the classroom, on the digital classroom, we could do something very different with them. And I think that's really exciting. And I also hope that as we plan for, maybe the rest of this year, but definitely what next year is going to look like, maybe we could use our resources differently. Maybe one teacher could be devoted to all the kids at that grade level who are doing like that sort of flipped classroom model. And then maybe 2 teachers are devoted to the regular classroom model. And then maybe one teacher is the one who's checking in through phone calls, et cetera, with those kids that are hard to get in touch with.
Never